Ireland is often seen as one of the richest countries in Europe, with a booming economy, thriving tech industry, and global recognition for its GDP per capita. But despite all this wealth, something seems off. Why then are so many Irish people feeling poor and sad? Today, we'll dig into why Ireland, for all its riches, still faces a mental health crisis and a growing divide between the wealthy and the struggling. The illusion of wealth, GDP, and the reality of living standards. Over the past few decades, Ireland's economy has seen explosive growth. Known as the Celtic Tiger, this period of rapid expansion has been driven largely by foreign investments from tech giants like Apple, Google, and Facebook, who've set up shop in the country to benefit from low corporate tax rates. This has led to a sharp increase in Ireland's GDP, placing the country among the wealthiest nations in the world. By 2021, Ireland's GDP per capita was among the highest globally, more than $100,000 per person. But here's the catch. GDP doesn't paint a full picture of a nation's well-being. It's a measure of overall economic activity, not the distribution of wealth or the quality of life for its people. The GDP paradox. Why does high GDP not equal happiness? While Ireland's GDP suggests prosperity, it doesn't mean the wealth is trickling down to everyone. In fact, Ireland's GDP is inflated due to the massive profits of multinational corporations, whose revenues are included in the country's total economic output. However, much of this money is repatriated back to headquarters abroad, rather than staying in the Irish economy. That means, for many Irish people, the wealth generated by Ireland's thriving economy doesn't directly improve their day-to-day lives. Meanwhile, the cost of living, especially housing, has been skyrocketing. Rent and property prices in cities like Dublin are some of the highest in Europe, while wages have remained relatively stagnant for the majority of workers. With the majority of wealth being siphoned away from the public through corporate tax breaks and the rising costs of living, many Irish citizens feel the disconnect between the country's impressive GDP and their own financial reality. The mental health crisis. Why are Irish people so sad? Now, it's not just about money. Mental health in Ireland is a growing concern, with the country having some of the highest rates of depression and suicide in Europe. Despite all the wealth, many Irish people feel isolated and trapped. The high cost of living, intense work pressures, and lack of affordable housing are some of the main stressors that contribute to this crisis. A study from the Irish Longitudinal Study on Aging, TILDA, found that Ireland has one of the highest rates of mental health issues among young people. This growing mental health crisis is exacerbated by economic inequality, where people feel they're excluded from the country's success. According to a 2020 report, almost 1 in 5 Irish people report experiencing depression at some point in their lives. Housing crisis, the struggle to find affordable living. One of the biggest factors contributing to Ireland's sense of despair is the housing crisis. Despite the country's economic wealth, many Irish people, especially younger generations, cannot afford to buy a home. Housing prices in Dublin have risen by over 80% since 2013, while wages have not kept up with the increase. This has left many people unable to secure affordable housing, particularly first-time buyers and renters. This lack of affordable housing has led to a rise in homelessness, with more than 10,000 people living in emergency accommodation as of 2023. For many, this is a stark reminder that Ireland's economic prosperity isn't being felt equally across the population. The housing crisis has become a significant source of frustration, especially among the younger generation who face the impossible task of owning a home in a market where prices are out of reach. This sense of hopelessness and frustration contributes to the broader feeling of sadness and disillusionment among many Irish citizens. The tax haven effect. Who benefits from Ireland's wealth? Another factor contributing to this paradox is Ireland's role as a tax haven for multinational corporations. With one of the lowest corporate tax rates in Europe, Ireland attracts companies from all over the world looking to reduce their tax bills. But while this boosts the country's GDP, it doesn't necessarily help the average citizen. Despite the economic boost from multinational companies, the profits they generate are often repatriated to other countries, and the tax benefits are not fully passed on to the public. In fact, some estimates suggest that these corporations pay less in taxes than small Irish businesses or everyday workers. This has resulted in a system where multinational companies and the wealthiest citizens are the main beneficiaries, while the working class feels the burden of an inflated cost of living and inadequate social services. So, if Ireland is so rich, why are Irish people poor and sad? The wealth that has come from Ireland's booming economy doesn't seem to be reaching its people, especially those who live outside Dublin's corporate bubble. Despite record GDP figures, The rising cost of living, an increasingly unaffordable housing market, and a mental health crisis show that wealth and happiness are not always linked. To truly address the sadness and frustration many Irish citizens feel, Ireland needs to find a way to ensure that its prosperity is shared by all. It's time for Ireland to address its economic and social inequality and to prioritize the well-being of its people, not just its corporate interests. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of global economic and social issues.